Hey everyone, Mollie and I recently had the chance to speak with the creators behind Young Jedi Adventures, the new animated kids series that was released on Disney Plus just a few days ago. It is, without a doubt, a show made for kids, but I asked about what adults might find to appreciate in the show, its connections with the High Republic, and of course, Nubs. And it was a great chat. It was a pleasure meeting all of them, so please enjoy our talk with showrunner Michael Olson, consulting producer Lamont McGee, and executive producer James Waugh.
Thanks everyone for taking some time to speak with us. We've only seen the first episode so far of the new show, but it was very cute.
Adorable.
Yeah, adorable. So obviously the show is not targeted for someone our age. It's meant for kids, but what do you think adults are going to find to enjoy in the series? Because I mean, we had a blast watching it.
Can I just say from the Star Wars side, because this was something that we have such a great heritage of just doing highest quality animation and doing something younger was a big conversation point. We wanted to make sure we did it right and it had to be kind of best in class and all the Star Wars values and the heart and soul that I think we try to pour into everything, no matter what kind of storytelling it is, or the medium. And I think if anything, we're hoping that people take those values that are so inherent to Star Wars, that these are great character stories that really sort of make you reflect on life and give you good code for living and help you navigate selfish impulses to do the right thing and be more selfless. And I can say when we first started talking to Michael, the hope was to create something that gave kids great code for living. That was great opportunity to teach them just how to be good people and tough in a world you have to navigate. So anyways, that's what I'm hoping kids take from it, is actually the character work. Star Wars, I think, is wonderful and magical and full of so many incredible elements that I think speak for themselves. But none of this storytelling works without something to say and without a heart and strong themes. And I think Michael and Lamont and team really brought those.
As a fan, I'm hoping that what people take away from this is that this is Star Wars. We really poured our heart and soul and our love of Star Wars into this show, and it truly is meant to be an introduction into a much larger world. And what's that?
Your first step.
First step, yes. Yes. So, I think most importantly, as a fan, there's that. But then, as James said, there's the core values that make Star Wars Star Wars. The key, the elements of friendship and selflessness. We want those to really come across to our audience and to friends and family, but also while taking them on a wild ride. I mean, it's Star Wars, and you have to have the swashbuckle, you have to have the adventure. And yes, this is a show for little kids, but we're not going to speak down to them. We want to introduce them into this world. We want them to have a blast. So yeah, I mean, I hope that the people take away from the show the values and the fun of Star Wars.
Also, I think the adults it'll feel familiar. They're like, oh, this is Star Wars. Like Michael said, like it's the same. It's like the Han, Leia, Luke, like trifecta of friends going on these adventures and learning from each other and getting into trouble and helping each other get out of trouble and learning their lessons and then going on another adventure. Like it's the stuff we wish we could do, even as adults. And to see these kids get to do it. But I think the best thing about it, as an adult, we get jaded. I don't know what happened. But we get jaded. But watching this show through these kids' eyes, you remember what it's like to feel that. To feel that whatever the next thing you're doing is, you're doing it for the first time. And to add that with the Star Wars lore and the adventure and the familiarity as an adult, I just think it's like it hits the nostalgia tinge, but it's also something completely new. So I don't know. I think it's fun that way.
You mentioned comparing it to Han, Luke, Leia. I definitely got Han vibes from Nash like right away, and I loved that.
Great.
And oh, go ahead.
That's great.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, Nash is such a wonderful character. Yes, definitely Han vibes for sure. And what's so fun about that character is, she's the non-Jedi character on our show. She's kind of a stand-in for much of our audience, especially people who aren't necessarily fans and don't know much about Star Wars, especially the younger kids. And so she gets to ask a lot of those questions, like, who's the little green guy, and what are you doing with your hands? And so she's got all of those. She's able to relate to our audience in that way, but also she's a gearhead and loves to fly fast. And I don't know what's more Star Wars than that.
And on top of that, I love. To me, she's a Xander comp from Buffy, but
I'm
her language.
I'm a huge Buffy fan, so yes.
We will not get started on that. That's a different Zoom because all day. So, but my favorite episode of Buffy was the Zeppo, which was just about Xander. So Nash is the character that's like, you don't need to be super powered to be a hero. Because like you just have to be brave, and you just have to understand that, with hard work, sometimes you fail, but you get back up again. And that's who Nash is. Like how she always was in my head. She was the every person who couldn't move things with her mind, but she was still there on every adventure.
Yeah, I love that she's kind of, like you said, the non-Jedi character, but she's still welcome into, like, she's welcome to come watch their training, and she's allowed to be part of the process a little bit. And I really love that she's being welcome into that, because sometimes, like in the prequel trilogy, in the prequel era, the Jedi training seemed so kind of like closed off to the rest of the world. And so I think that is teaching a really important lesson to kids. So yeah, I love that.
The inclusivity of it.
Wonderful. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, it's one of the wonderful things about this point in the timeline is this era, this idea that we have the ability to tell stories about characters going out to these outpost temples. And part of, I think, the Jedi's intention with that is to integrate with other cultures, to be kind of the shining reflection of what the Jedi can be, but not to push them away, to engage and to make friends and to invite them in to see what the Jedi are. Not only is it expanding the Jedi's own perspective of the galaxy, but brings people in and shows people like Nash that there's adventures to have with them.
We really appreciated the inclusivity for Nash, and also Nash's just self-confidence that she doesn't feel like she is lesser than because she doesn't have magical powers. But yeah, as you bring up the High Republic, and I see Michael's wearing a High Republic shirt as well.
That's the shirt that I got my tattoo from.
Are you serious? Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's great. Yeah, I love this. I love this shirt. Yeah,
we're clearly big old High Republic fans. So
man, that's awesome.
But what drove the decision to set these stories in the High Republic era?
It started actually early on at Lucasfilm when we were talking about, what type of storytelling do we want to do in this era and what feels appropriate. And I can take this back even to earlier conversations when we were first breaking the High Republic. Going into that initial conference of the ranch, I think Mike Siegland and I, and even conversations with Kathy early on, were around the idea of, we want to create an era that allowed for Jedi storytelling in a way we hadn't been able to do in the past. We wanted an aspirational time where these characters aren't fraught with, a Sith machinated plan to undermine them, or sort of, the stuff Dave gets into so well, which is some of the corruption of the Republic and the bureaucracy of it. We really thought that we could create something that was that aspirational vision of the Jedi, as the defender, as the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy for 1,000 generations. So that was always something that we we thought could scale to storytelling for younger audiences as well as older audiences. That was part of planning. But we also always saw it as an aspirational time, and that was really part of it, with decisions of connecting, creating hyperspace lane connections to be able to engage with cultures in the Outer Rim in new ways. This was all part of the feeling we wanted to have from this era, which was a more sort of connective, bold time. And obviously the Starlight Beacon, was a symbol for that. And so when we started initially having conversations around what this show could be, we knew that was probably where we wanted to set it. The show had to be able to evoke the key Star Wars fantasy elements. We needed to invest in lightsabers and ships and obviously the Jedi, but all the different species. And it was a time, because of going out to an outpost temple and engaging with other cultures, it allowed for some of the exploration and some of the connective storytelling we wanted. And then we started engaging with Michael, who came in with a really fantastic pitch. I always say this about this project, that we weren't going to do anything unless it was the right story. We're not going to do anything unless it could really hold its own with all the great animated work we do for its own demo. And the only way you get that is with the talent you partner with the creative team that is going to bring that to life and dedicate so much of their life to it. And so in some of the early conversations, Josh Rhimes, who's the other executive producer on the show, and I had with Michael, we really felt it was a shared values. We really felt that this was, he was someone that understood the demo really well from his history, understood the heart and soul of the type of storytelling we were looking for, but also really loved Star Wars and really loved the High Republic, and saw the same thing we did too, that this was a great canvas to tell aspirational stories. And that's what kids needed now more than ever. So Michael, I don't know if you want to add to that, but
yeah, I mean, speaking to the High Republic of it all, as James said, I think it first of all, when I had the opportunity to set the show in this era, it just felt so right, because it is such a bright, hopeful, optimistic era. And when you're telling a show for kids, that's so important, just to have those elements. And again, knowing that the Jedi are so revered at this time, felt like when I was a little kid looking up to Luke Skywalker and thinking, I want to be a Jedi too, just like him. And knowing that, the various kids and people that they're going to encounter in this show are going to look up to them too. And hopefully kids at home will have that feeling as well. So it's been really fun. The High Republic is it's been a gift. That's all I can say. And it's really fun.
Of course, as you're all fans of the High Republic, so we as much of the aspirational and wonderful time as it is for the Jedi, it also can be of many other things for the other Jedi. But we don't get into any of that. Okay.
Look. Yeah, and look, maybe
don't come to planet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but it's been fun though, because we have so many wonderful characters. We've got the characters on our show, but the rest of the other High Republic team, they've created such a wonderful set of characters and worlds, and perhaps we'll get to see a few of them in our show. I'm not promising anything.
You know what I will promise. I will say that you can see elements of the High Republic in this show. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but it would. I feel that it felt right, and it would do a disservice not to be able to see some of these amazing places, these imaginative places we built in the High Republic, or some of these interesting characters that you might know enough.
That is very exciting.
Yeah, that's juicy for me. I'm imagining that meme now of the person kind of like jamming out to music, and in the background chaos is happening.
Yeah.
Like that's what.
That's all you care about now.
Oh no, I'm
Kinda,
saying like all
kinda.
the kids are.
They're all
having
they're
adventure.
off in their own world. Yeah.
Starlight Beacon is exploding in the background.
Well, speaking of some of the characters from that era, we have Yoda. I'm wondering, how does his teaching style differ at this point in Yoda's life versus what we see of like Empire Strikes Back Yoda? And would he have any advice for his older self, or would older Yoda have advice for younger Yoda?
Okay,
Really.
that's a good question.
That is a very good question.
Okay, this is what I feel personally. I feel that young Yoda would tell old Yoda, remember what it was like. Because right now, at this point, he's jaded. Everything is falling apart. He's been through some things. But in the High Republic era with these kids, everything is bright and shiny. Everything is hopeful. Everything is optimistic, and Jedis are beloved. And these kids, he can just concentrate on the kids and teaching, and he doesn't have to worry about the outside noise. But when he's older, it's all outside noise. And I think as great as Yoda like is, when he was on the Dagobah system, not happy. Like it's a whole different Yoda. So older Yoda and younger Yoda, it's just remember the light. And I think Luke actually brought that back to him because he was so impetuous and so just like he's like, oh, this kid. But teaching always, no matter how much teachers, if you're innately a teacher by your essence, you just love teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Yoda being able to teach Luke again actually kind of saved him a little bit and kind of gave him a purpose again, even though he was all gruff about it. But that's just my opinion personally.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, look, Michael, I'm curious of your thoughts about how is he different? How are you writing him different? I would say it's interesting because look, I'm not going to put words in Dave's mouth, but in conversations you have with Dave, the Clone Wars were certainly an event that caused Yoda to really think and reflect in many ways, and look at the galaxy different and see some of the mistakes he's made. But I never feel Yoda's lost any of his spirit or his hope or the sense of him that is that wise, good teacher. I think he has to teach different lessons later on. Here, he teaches lessons that are the lessons you want to impart to aspiring Jedi in a time that hasn't been taken over by the Empire and isn't as what do you think, Michael?
I mean, I think I love this question. I could talk for hours on this. I think like on a very like practical level, look, he's much younger, and so one of the things that I love that we get to do with this Yoda is, yes, we see Yoda training Luke and he's riding on his back and all that, but this Yoda gets to actually train with the kids and physically be with them. Yeah, he's got his cane, but we all know Yoda doesn't necessarily need it all the time. And so it's very possible we might get to see Yoda on a mission or two with these kids too. So I feel like a big part of Yoda's teaching on this show is that he's very hands-on with the kids in a way that maybe we don't get to quite see elsewhere.
And I would say the one moment, the wonderful child, the mind of a child is like, that moment in the prequels is something that we've talked a lot is so who Yoda is when he was teaching, and to kind of bring that forward and have more than just one moment, I think will be delightful for fans who had always wanted to see what Yoda was like previously.
I loved in episode 1 already that moment he shares with Kai about his lightsaber and passing that along. I thought that was a wonderful moment right from the start.
Yeah.
One of my favorite arcs. A highly celebrated arc of the Clone Wars involves Yoda with some younglings going on a gathering, getting their lightsaber crystals. And I'm curious what you think when these kids, when Kai and Liz and Nubs all go on their gatherings one day, what kind of challenges do you think they're going to have to face? For like Gunji had to learn patience and Petro had to get over his selfishness. So what do you think the main challenges are for each of these characters?
Man, these are great questions. I know. Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but what I'll say with Kai is, Yoda says one day you're going to be a great Jedi someday, and Kai, I think, is going to struggle with those expectations of himself and what that looks like, and maybe trying a little too hard. And so that there's some fun themes we can play there with him. With Liz, she's based off of my daughter, and who's a very strong, just fun character. I love Liz and so much, but Liz also has a wonderful flaw that sometimes she loses focus when she sees a cute animal or something fun, which is very much like my daughter. And so perhaps focus is such a part of the Jedi teaching, and I think perhaps that might be something she might struggle with. And then Nubs, he is the character that his emotions are on his sleeve. He's up high highs and low lows, and so perhaps he might have to deal with control and breathing and all of that. So I think there's a lot to mine there. But again, I don't want to do any more spoilers other than that, but say those would be the challenges they might deal with.
So Michael crafted these characters so well that I cannot say anything else but what he just said. Like literally, this is the path they're on. So I'm just here to co-sign. That's a yes.
Check that off. But we bring up Nubs. I have to ask, what is the lifespan of a Pooba? Because we were just given Ernestra Rowe is coming to the Acolyte. Is there this chance that we're going to get live action Pooba in?
Live action Nubs.
I think I'm fine to say this because this is nothing but this. But if I have my way, every time I get a chance, every time Leslie and I are talking about franchise, fiction, I always put the bug in your ear. It would be great to see a Pooba, like an adult Pooba in your show.
Sliding this picture.
No promises at all, because I'm just putting it out to the universe, and we'll see what happens. But the conversation that we talk about quite a bit.
Yeah, it would be a delight to see these little Poobas, little Nubs turns into a very big giant creature. So it's going to be fun if we get to see one as an adult. So yeah. I would love to see that.
It's like a reverse baby Yoda. We had old Yoda and we got the baby version. Now we have young Nubs. We need old Nubs. Grizzled Nubs.
The grizzled Nubs.
That's great.
But that's what I love about this franchise, right? And that's what I love working on all the stories across so many different things. Is that's not something that is impossible, right? And Michael has a plan for these characters, and it's stories we want to tell. But Michael's a big fan too, and I think we talk all the time of like, wouldn't it be great to see the adventures Nubs go on? That's not tailored for our demographic, this demographic one day. Like, will he become a great hero Jedi and have harder adventures in his life? I don't know. Or maybe, Nubs will end up being much more chill and just wanting to kind of be a teacher himself. Who knows? But the possibility with all these characters is always that. Anything you create in Star Wars can have a life. And that's part of the fun of it. As you both know more than, most people, I think.
And the beauty what James is saying is that I don't think we've ever had this starting point to be able to follow these characters from this age.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
It's no matter what happens, it's just cool to have this entry point, and whatever happens in the future, whether you see like older Nubs on his adventures, it's just cool that we have that. Because we have Luke, Leia, and Han, but we have them in like a set period of time in their lives for the most part. not these kids. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, I guess our last question would be, what kind of challenges did you face in creating these new characters for a fairly new era of Star Wars, as opposed to using more familiar franchise elements that, you know, a lot of kids know who someone like Vader is, or Anakin, Padme. Were there any challenges that you had to get past for creating these new characters?
I would say that the biggest challenge for me was knowing that this show was supposed to be an introduction to kids who maybe knew nothing about Star Wars, and that George Lucas talks about how there are motifs and themes in the movies that echo. They're not necessarily repeated, but they echo, and character archetypes kind of echo. And I felt it was, what's that?
It's like poetry, it rhymes.
Exactly, it rhymes.
Perfect.
And it was important to me that these characters had those elements that felt familiar and felt like Star Wars, but were also fresh, so that when kids, move on beyond the show to Clone Wars or to the movies, it'll all feel familiar and feel at peace. And that was a big challenge to kind of thread that needle. But a fun challenge I was excited to tackle.
I'll just say that one of the challenges in general with the High Republic, but also like one of its incredible strengths, and I'm sure I've said this before in some interview, and Michael can speak to some of the challenges and strengths too, but we're building this together. I mean, I think, look, when we initially cracked this era, we had an intention that this could scale up, and so many other different storytellers could come in, and so many different other mediums. So we built it that way, with that possibility. But as much as Pablo has built the perfect High Republic Bible that we use, that has codified a lot of this time, there's so much unknown and so much undefined intentionally, so that we can bring in incredible creators like Michael, like Leslie, and then build
Lamont.
this together, and Lamont. And I could go on and on this list, right? But like, part of it is that we're building it together. And sometimes we don't have all the answers. So there's been many times when Michael's, emails Matt Martin, and Matt Martin says, like, actually, I'm not sure. We need to figure this out.
Those are good times.
Yeah.
But
like, really?
You're not sure. That's also its strength, So it'll be interesting to see how it evolves in the years ahead. And I think this show is a special one.
Yeah.
It has already just appealed to us. We enjoyed what we've seen so far. It's bright and exciting and fun. And like, we were joking about how I was kind of going into this like, I bet the themes are going to be a little simpler. Like, the lessons are going to be like, hey, you should share. And Molly was like, yeah, but adults need to hear that too still. It's nice to have the reminder.
Yeah. Adults need a refresher sometimes on the more simple lessons in life. So it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's true.
Refresher course. It's like a booster shot for your moral.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I do have one more question.
Okay.
And this is just a question I ask everyone. It's not specified for the show, but I love to know everyone's favorite kind of side character, someone who you feel is underappreciated, maybe someone even that you feel like you might be their biggest fan. For example, mine is Biggs Darklighter, just someone that they don't get the spotlight enough. But I love to hear from creators, especially, who they really treasure.
Well, as a Nash fan, I don't know if it's this. I don't know if this character is that side, but as a Nash fan, as a pilot, I just love her being a pilot. Wedge, like he's.
Oh, you took mine.
Mine too.
Sorry, guys.
Wedge Antilles. What was he doing in the
good.
Yeah.
Go on, Michael. Go on,
Yeah.
But also, it's
no,
not
go on. I interrupted you. I feel that's
No. I want to hear Lamont.
All right, Lamont, what do you got?
No, I was like, Wedge was literally but this is not a side character, but it's not a beloved character either, really. I'm a C3PO guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
because I'm very much the analytical, logical, how are we going to figure this out thing guy. And sometimes that's not appreciated.
Honestly, that's like a great example of the unsung hero. He's always there, and everyone's always just telling him to shut up when he's being nothing but helpful.
But he always shows up. He's always there.
That's a good one.
Well, Wedge is off the table, so I can't do Wedge now. But oh gosh, you know what? Well, here this takes context. This takes some comic book context. But if you've read Charles Soule's story, Lando's story, there's I sort of look at Lobot in a whole new way and fell in love with
who I kind of resemble right now.
And that comic, I thought it was wonderful when Charles first pitched it, and just sort of their dynamic shed a whole new light up towards them. So, Lobot.
I love that. 3 great answers, and I'm not going to ever fault anyone for choosing a pilot. I'm a big pilot guy, so
Insulation from, because come on.
Yeah.
Well, those are all the questions we have. So thank you all so much for taking some time to speak with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for what you do. I have watched many of your videos, so I very much appreciate it. I'm delighted to meet you both.
Yeah,
oh, this is so nice to meet you too.
Thank you for taking the time out to speak to us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Happy to do it. Excited to do it.
It's great.
Awesome.